welcome, Jackie Rose, to Life with Fife. It's such an honor to meet you in person, and just have the opportunity to chat with you. As I was sharing before, that I'm a huge admirer of your knitting, and also just really enjoy your podcasts. I loved Caddy Jacks, and I really love Jackson Rose now with you and your. I love your mom. Your mom is so amazing. She's so great, Sally.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess I just wanted to, there's a couple of I have some questions about I'm going to talk about I'm going to ask you about the creative process, but I always admire what you wear. And so like, I love what you're wearing right now. And so I wonder, so do you color is such a part of your aesthetic, right? So even in like a simple outfit that you're wearing right now, where color obviously plays such a huge role, like how does it inform how you get dressed every day and just present yourself in the world?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
Oh.
Yeah, clothing has I've loved clothing since I was, a little girl.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because I don't know about you, but I had a few uniform pieces that I wore over and over.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like that's sort of that's that fundamental training of I like this.
Mm.
And that's really important to just know what you like authentically
Yeah.
as a child.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's a very there's kind of two voices. There's this quiet voice of that just comes from within, which is the I like that. And then there's who inspires you and what you've been exposed to and all of that. And but in a very wouldn't that just be the same way as reading, for instance, your taste in what books you choose to read and what passages stand out to you and what becomes you in your reading life? I think in a whole life that starts to unfold on how you express yourself. So what you take in, if you take in a rich diet, you start to express out some of it would, I would think, be inevitable, maybe.
Right.
But it is, even this morning, it definitely, and my whole life, I don't know, I feel like it's funny that this reminds me, I watched one of your podcasts and I feel like you're in education. Is that?
Yes, I am. I'm a teacher. Yeah.
So
You're a teacher too, right?
I was, yes.
Yeah.
And so do you remember when they did all the analysis about a competent reader and looking at all the little moves that they did that
Yes.
you know? And so I think if you feel confident in your dressing, there's all these tiny moves that you do. And it is akin to reading along and then going, oh, I didn't get that, and rereading, or reading along and pausing and taking that in. So as you get dressed, you put on pieces and you have this inner dialogue, right? And you just I put on a different sweater initially, and then I was cold, and then I put this on, and I didn't like the two of them together, so I put this shirt on instead. But
Right.
and I have to tell you one thing, it's not important, but I actually, since you asked, I actually thought it.
Yeah.
So this little belt,
Yeah.
a men's plastic belt, but it's blue and red.
Oh, but it's perfect.
Yeah, and I was in, I don't know, I think I was in Memphis once at a coffee shop, and they sold, men's belts. And that little piece makes me so happy,
Yeah.
it just,
Yeah.
so but it is it's so funny because I feel like it's a lot of truly a lot of trial and error and play. And it's a false idea that you just go in there and nail it immediately. You have a pile on the floor,
100%.
pick it up.
Yes, I so get it. I mean, well, I just want to share with you how much I love this. This is the Friday shrug, right? Is that what
This,
is?
this one to me looks like a Saturday, but whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I'm late to
From
the bandwagon. Yeah, I love this. And you have kind of awakened in me a love of accessory knitting. I've always been like a sweater knitter. And the accessory though is such a it's so important. And first of all, it's a great transitional season
Mhm.
knit, but it can also be used in the winter over a sweater or something. And it's also beautiful over a long jacket or some, so um, and I changed it a little bit because this is a fingering knit, and then it's also like I guess it's kind of like a semi-worsted. I kind of just like said, let me see how this works.
Mhm.
And I used a very fine needle, and then I did double ribbing, like knit two, purl two, because I wanted it to have that squishy kind of stretchy, and I just love it so much. I love it. I love it's kind of opened me up to color in a new way. Sorry, my dryer is going off. So so color, and I've always been, that's part of what I love about knitting is um how color just everything for me is color and texture. It's just my house is just, my furniture is velvet, and the colors in my house, everything is just like really rich. And um so this connection to color, but I don't think that I think that that was open to me from knitting. I don't think that I was open to color in that way as a kid. Or I mean, I remember having outfits that I loved, and I don't think I was aware enough to know why I loved them. I just loved how they looked, and how I felt when I wore them. And
Mhm.
so I was wondering how, like, so for you, when you're creating, or when you're designing or when you're knitting something, how do you choose the colors? What's your approach to color and texture? And
Oh, well, like color is everything, right?
yeah,
And it is
yeah,
so exciting having the means to having some media to use. We have yarn that's
yeah,
dyed.
yeah,
We can have a commercial palette or we can have a hand dyed palette. And um and I so it's a huge um let's see, it's like pulling in a spark of idea, and then I keep layering in ideas to reinforce it and
mhm,
coming back to them and adding images. So for instance, I'll show you, this is nice because I can show you, I have a private Instagram
mm.
that I use I use, do you know the feature where you can do a story and make a highlight? You know,
I've never done it, but I've heard you talk about this, and I'm actually glad you're mentioning it now because I was curious.
so I can they disappear in 24
Yeah,
hours.
yes, I have
I
actually done that.
highlight them and I'll highlight it under green, and then I can go, okay, here's green things I like, and I can just
Yeah,
you can't see any, or pink, and that helps me kind of collect, and that's
mhm,
been new.
yeah,
And then it helps me, like if I get stuck, I can go back to like what I that can help. You know, I
mm.
the shawl I just this cookbook was sitting out,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it, you know,
gorgeous colors. Yeah,
it ended up being in here. You can
yeah,
see,
yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah.
And and for in this one, I just brought two examples down. This was for Richard, which I recently did, but I
Oh,
just kept
gorgeous.
pulling out his jackets over and over and like setting it down and getting the palette off of his wardrobe, because I do
Yeah,
think it's definitely I think a mistake is to think it's like just a one-to-one relationship where there's the yarn and there you are and you just go in and It's
yeah,
like the more it's triangulated, like here are some things I'm interpreting or playing with. I think that just is a gives just this tension and a dynamic. And
yeah,
and the other piece I would say about color though, and again, becoming more of a master of it for yourself. Um, Obviously, my whole life, my mother was playing with fabrics and proportion and scale and value. And so, yes, we're introduced to like it's almost like the red light district in knitting, like, come look at this color, ooh, and you get all into it. But
Yeah.
to make it your own, how to like have a relationship with it is to have some not so great colors around it sometimes, not so flashy colors. And so I literally, I'm developing this pattern with these, I can talk about it later, but with
Yeah.
these, stripe sequences
Gorgeous.
that are meant to be different but
Yes.
related.
Yeah.
And to do that is it's such a fun visual puzzle for me.
Yeah.
But what I have come to realize in doing that is, say you get excited because some dyer is, this is a common thing, and God bless everyone. And I'm not saying like, it's not a criticism at all. They're inspired by a movie and they pull colors off the palette and they pull all the like pretty, sexy colors, and they have like 10 gorgeous colors that we're all dying over. They're beautiful. But what you don't realize if you actually look at the movie still is that's embedded in a bunch of neutrals, a bunch of black and white,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
something ugly over there. And so when you have just a palette of all the same energy colors,
Yeah.
I think a lot of that happens in knitting. And
Yeah.
and you and I think like the first entry is 100%. I see that color and I love it and I want to bring it into my life. Great.
Right.
But then the next is how to make that, how to find the next thing, I guess, is expressing yourself, not just liking that color.
Yeah.
And and that involves a lot of like, honestly, because I'm literally doing right now, I could go get the box. I'm doing all these stripe swatches and
Mm.
I just keep, and I'm really loving it. And I'm loving, but it's very like, honestly, you have to like witness, for me, other people might be different, but a lot of doubt and criticism and ripping out and just kind of like keep
Mhm.
going until something in you goes, oh, that's what I'm after. Oh, that's what
Yeah.
and I don't know how you do it if you don't have a like desire for, that's what I think it has to be like in any creative thing, a lot of imitation at first to learn.
Yes. Absolutely.
But then the thing about accessories and the thing about sweater knitting and the thing about being a knitter is, again, and this won't surprise you, if we just as knitters take it to just focusing on one hot sweater, and we
Yeah.
don't see how the sweater is going to be worn with what pants, what shoes, what jacket, what earrings, what belt, like you're not getting the full idea. And for knitting to say, well, that's not our domain, we don't care about that.
Right.
No, I want to see how the knit exists with everything else.
Yeah. I think that's great.
No.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You talked about that on a podcast I watched recently where you said how a garment or an accessory fits in with the rest of your wardrobe. And I thought, dumb, like that, like, of course, that's amazing, right? Because part of why I knit is not just the expressive creativity part of it. It's also because I love beautiful things and I want to have my wardrobe be filled with handmade beautiful things. And the more I can use them together, then I mean, the more bang for your buck, right? And it's just,
Right. I mean, just looking at your home, all the like beautiful colors and paintings and art and flowers
oh,
and,
thank you.
you know, fabrics, etc. So yeah, that's what we have an opportunity to do with these high
Yeah.
quality things that are slow. And I wasn't, again, it was funny, like it purposely didn't wear any knitwear because I was just like, I don't know. I just decided not to. But then when I was like, but I'll show my latest shawl and I will just say,
Mhm.
put it on. I was like,
Love
oh,
it.
this is not designed to go with this. But
But it
was
it it
I
works.
right?
It totally
Yeah.
works.
And
I
so,
love it. So
yes,
was that the half and half, the Pearl Soho, which one is that?
this is like basically it's like a step. Yes, this is you can absolutely see right in here is a half and half triangle,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, but
But
yeah.
but then there's like, this is, the Soho Square was to get more color in, and then
Yeah.
there was a need, and I'm just gonna do this too for you, just because I feel it showing this off
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
That's
Please
just
do.
how it works, though, like in that.
Gorgeous.
So again, I didn't plan this, but if I wore this out in the world, I would
Yeah. It looks amazing.
maybe blazer, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it works. But I mean, the stripes work together. It's not just the color, it's the structure.
Mhm.
It's really amazing.
And I had felt like, it's funny because actually the last time I was in London, we went out, we forgot something, we had to go back. And I grabbed my last Soho Square that I did and I wore it. And I hadn't had it and I felt cold and I needed it. And when I put it back on, and I maybe feel this way about your accessories, it just felt like a flag of like meanness of
Yeah,
I was I was wrapped up in like this security and joy of I made this, this is me, and I may be in London and
right.
the tiny little Midwest girl, like I don't mean tiny, but you know what I mean, insignificant. But here I am in my thing and I feel me. I
Yeah,
feel good. And
yeah,
I feel like that's the goal of playing with color. And so again, I will just to go back to your initial question, I will say the other thing about knitting is I think if we really want to take ourselves seriously, we need to empower ourselves with larger palettes in order to make mistakes with and play with, and not think we can just go in project by project and just nail it at the
yeah,
store. That's
yeah,
it's too hard, and I really can't imagine any art form thinking they can do that.
yeah. No, it's such a big thing is having this playful and sort of non perfectionistic attitude because especially when I started knitting, I realized I made a mistake, but I was like, I've come too far. I can't go back, you know? And now I'm just like, whatever, rip it back, because so it is the process. And that is also even, unpicking your knitting is still knitting. It's still part of the process and it's still fun and it's still, um, and if you let go of the outcome, I think you really like this, I wanted it to be, it was so kind of attached to it being an orange with this really beautiful blue, poppy blue from Knitting with Olive. And I started it and I maybe got halfway through and then it just didn't feel like what I wanted, um so I just said, I'm just gonna pull it back. I'm not gonna and then when I picked up this beige, it was like, oh yeah, I want something neutral. I wanted it to be the orange, not this contrast between the orange and the blue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that I'm learning because I've always done color work sweaters and I do have a good intuitive process about color. Like I can when I'm given a chart, I can fill in the blanks and say, oh, this would look nice and this would look nice. But this kind of where it's not stripes is sort of it's still the design, but it's more about the color in a way, about how they work together and how it looks as a whole. And I love how this looks against with a white shirt. And I'm wearing blue earrings and like all of these, it opens, it's forcing me to think about color in a new way. So yeah, so interesting. It's such an interesting process.
Yeah, and I don't think, I remember being in high school in art class, and we had a guest art teacher, and she did a series of paintings on olives. And you're a teenager and you're mean. And I was like, how on earth could she paint olives over and over again? But it really struck me at the time. And then it is, because I'm in love with the stripe, is
Yeah.
that the width of the stripe, the repetition of the stripe, there is
Yeah. There's
so much that you
yeah,
learn about color in that. And so, yeah, I have been on this odyssey of making striped things, but they're kind of irrelevant. I
yeah,
mean, I would say I initially 100%, it was about, I mean, for years and years and years, this feeling that you have when you wear that. I wanted that feeling. But
Yeah.
I understand that feeling now, and I
Yeah.
have a stack of them. So that feeling, but if it's a canvas to do color play on, yes.
Yeah. It's so, yeah, it's infinitely interesting. And it's always new, it's always fresh, and it's always, I have what I've started to do now is just like group yarns together in colors. And I'm, like looking forward to trying new combinations. And yeah, it's like I could have 100 of these and it will be, each of them is going to be unique. Um, and I love what you said about how when you put on a garment, um, when you put on something that you've worn and you're in a different place, or I mean, I always teach, in the winter, we have these long, cold, snowy winters here in Vermont. And I try to wear something that I've knitted every day. It just is the way that I maintain a connection to myself, because I'm with teenagers and it's just it's easy to sort of lose your grounding sometimes. And knitting, absolutely, wearing my own knitted garments definitely gives me a sense of who I am. And it feels almost like a shield because I'm a little introverted, and the extroversion of teaching sometimes can exhaust me, but I think I use the strength I get from my knitted items, so
Mhm.
really.
Yeah, like that's like to me the church of knitting, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And
one one
and
hundred percent.
the other thing about it is just the be with yourself, you
Yeah,
know. There's all
yeah,
sorts of different on a continuum of how much we can, how much, I don't know, we want outside things coming in or how much we want to listen to ourselves. Like you could knit and watch TV the entire time
yeah,
or read or multitask or do 10,000 things, or you can just knit and be with yourself. None of them are
right,
right or wrong,
right.
but the fact that it does provide you something to do just with yourself
Yeah,
is rare. Yeah.
100%.
I feel like that's just so good for us. That sort of like open, receptive, doing something but not really doing something, like
Yeah,
gardening, like knitting.
I so agree. And I mean, part of what I talk about on the channel is this connection between soundness of mind and knitting, and how it just, I think that part of what appeals to me, I mean, I think have a similar journey. You started when your kids were little, or was it something you've done all your life? Or
No, yeah, when they were.
yeah. So my daughter went to a Waldorf preschool, and they
Mm,
did, like, so knitting was part of, like, the kids were doing finger knitting, and then the mothers that came to the program would sit down and do knitting. And I was just like, it eased so much of my anxiety about being a mother. And I was like, what is it about this that is
wow.
so, it just gave me. And I also noticed that my kids were more relaxed when I was knitting. And it was kind of like, and I thought maybe I know that a lot of mothers, and I totally have experienced this as well, overwhelmed with the amount of attention that children need, and the focus that you need to put on them. But I think that I might have overdone the focus, out of a fear of not giving them enough attention, or I was a little bit of a helicopter, I think. And knitting gave me something where I was present for them. They saw me there, but I wasn't hovering. I wasn't paying attention to them specifically. They were able to do what they wanted to do, but they knew I was available. And
Mhm.
so that was like, I love this, I love this. I can do something that really feeds me and really kind of nourishes my soul, and still be present for my kids, and still make things that make me feel myself. And so it was like a really healing experience for me when I started knitting. And I wondered if you have anything like that to share, or of how it's.
Hmm. I mean, and on the other end of the spectrum too, I just know um that there are times, well, and it's the same spectrum really. Mothering is a like can be a death of who you were before you were a mother.
Absolutely.
And so it's hard. And also being with people through a tragedy or through a natural dying,
Yeah.
the time and it's not, you're not in control, and you just have to, so it is this great bearing witness. And as you know, as an educator, I feel like your attention and being present with somebody is the biggest gift you have to offer.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like I, for, this isn't a direct answer, but it was very interesting to me recently where, when my father was dying and he was in hospice, I knit just a organic cotton. I feel like it was, if I blue sky alpaca organic
Mhm.
cotton, just ribbed blanket, right? And when I needed to change yarn, I just tied a little like thing because I wanted sort of time to be in
Mhm.
it. I didn't want it to be seamless or whatever. So they're just little ties. And I never really, and then we had it, for I don't know, 15 years. And recently I went and I didn't even think about it. And I went over to my son's apartment and he had it. I didn't even know he had it. And he's like, I love this. This is my childhood. I always wrapped up in this. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I knit. And he's like, yeah, I know you knit it when grandpa was in hospice. And those are those things that I'm so grateful to be a part of. And,
Mhm.
you know, and it is our, you know what it's like to have ancestors that you've never met, that you have maybe some of their things or things that they've made, and this whole continuity, and that
Yeah.
some of these things will, many of these things will be here longer than we are, which is very strange. So like making with that in mind is a real, like it's really we're so lucky to have
Yeah.
this. And there's so many layers of why we're lucky to have this.
Yeah. It's like a marking of time. It's a connection to a lineage. It's a life in many ways. You could, since I've been knitting, I can everything I pick up, it could be the first thing I knitted. I remember exactly where I was, what was happening, what was going on, how old my child or children were. It's just brings it so back so clearly. And you're right, it also speaks to them and it brings them right back. So I feel like we are so lucky to have those markers, or just it's kind of a visual way of creating a life that, so wonderful.
And then my favorite thing, which is in flux with this move, of course, because um well, I'm just new, it's new, and I don't know
Yeah.
anyone, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it's a very small town. And but is the fact that you and I are talking, or that, and there you are in Vermont, and somehow I'm having this opportunity to know this woman, a real woman, Lisa Fife
Yeah.
in Vermont, that I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Right.
That astonishes me.
Yeah, it is such a community, an instant connection. And yeah, and it kind of reminds me, it's like like, I don't know, your mother is very creative, and does she, I know she does quilting, but was she a knitter as when you were?
So,
No. Yeah, I have no knit. My grandmother did knit, but she was more of a crocheter, so I have that connection. But I often just feel like the act of knitting connects me to endless streams of women who came before me. And um, it's sometimes feels like the most meaningful work that I do all day. If it just is the thing that where I am the most present. I shouldn't say that, because teaching is important. And um, but when you do it for a number of years, some of it you can be, kind of on autopilot for, and not I mean, I'm present, but I'm not
present for yourself,
present
probably.
for myself. Whereas, yeah, the knitting just feels, because maybe because it's tangible, I don't know, it just feels more real. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I don't really even know what I mean by that. But it's like it feels important. There is something about it that just always has felt very important to me, and I don't really know if I can articulate why.
Well, and isn't it wonderful to have something that's bigger than your capacity to articulate
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
little box
yeah,
anyway? you
Yeah.
know, you
Yeah,
just feel
exactly.
it, it's bigger than you, it's older than you, and you get to
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah. So could I ask you a question about I was watching a recent podcast and you were wearing this gorgeous sweater. It was Faber knits. Is that what is it Faber knits? No, I'm getting the name wrong.
Okay, what did it look like?
It looked, it was a raglan with kind of like a mock neck but what you did was you had it over dyed after it was
I
knitted.
wore that last night to dinner.
Oh my God, that's such a gorgeous sweater. I love that. So I was curious,
You want me to run get
who's,
it?
yeah. Oh my God, that's so gorgeous. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine.
Get their coffee refilled or whatever. This,
Yeah. Oh, it's so gorgeous. This is so amazing.
yeah. So, yes.
I mean, so can you talk a little bit about that sweater? I know you've talked about it
Oh,
before, so I'm sorry to ask you to do it again, but
well, this is what I love though. Like, for instance,
yeah.
we went out for dinner last night with a couple who, go all over the world. They're very, what, I don't know. And the woman told me, God bless her, that she has 6 closets, whatever. I'm like, oh, what am I going to wear to dinner? And it was funny because this is the thing about knitting. I was like, I'm going to wear something that I made that feels like,
Yeah,
and it is pretty amazing when you think about, um, when you're the only, it doesn't matter, but you
right.
even if it like, well, I'll get back to that. But this specific thing, this is Fabel Knitwear, and it's in Julie Aslane's Lazio DK, and it was in Biscotti. And it was a really beautiful neutral. Um, but Alyssa, who owns Cake Wool,
Yeah.
uh, she has such a gorgeous color sense, and she's a friend of mine. And I was just like, hey, if I send you this sweater that I'm not wearing very much, will you just do like some
Yeah.
graffiti,
It's
whatever?
so
And
gorgeous.
this is what she did. And so this is all her work, this
Yeah.
fun,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's
No,
just gorgeous.
but what if it's a delightful collaboration?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
love it. Um, yeah, and honestly, like it's not about looking expensive or looking, but I mean, you to look at that, it is just such a beautiful garment. And you just, so that's how I feel like, I follow fashion and I see, fashion houses like the Row and things like that, where they have all these like really large, oversized sweaters and they're thousands of dollars, and I think, I can't help but think like, oh, I wonder if they make them oversized so that they fit people better. So it's easier to just sell them, so many of them, and then the look is oversized. So if it doesn't really fit you, you're not going to get people complaining about that. And I thought how much of fashion is really just what is dictated to us, about because it's economically
sure.
easier for and so I mean, looking at that, it's just like that is so beautiful and so hard it would be so hard to replicate that on a mass scale, right? And it's just so much more valuable because of that, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And that, of course, and that you can knit it and end it wherever you want.
Yeah, and it's exactly, bespoke to your figure and such a and there is true value in having something really beautiful that no one else has. I mean, I just think
Mhm.
it's so unique and special. So I love
Right.
that.
Yeah, no. Well, and it's just funny on that line, I did work in a women's clothing store when I left teaching. I did a few other things to make the transition, and I really loved working in this women's clothing store. But it was really funny to see, we've all read these articles, that there would be a many hundreds of dollars sweater and it would be acrylic, but it would
Yeah, I know.
label, like some fancy label.
I know. It's amazing to me. And I think, do these women not know? But I mean, but you wouldn't really realize it until you knit yourself. And so the vast majority of them, I don't think are interested in that. But um, it's not a judgment. I mean, I think, and some people prefer acrylic, right? Because there's zero itch and there's, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but and again, I know people can do whatever they want, but
Yeah,
and I'm not judging them by saying that. I just mean I don't feel like it's obviously people are allergic to wool or all these things, but
right.
just saying wool itself, like the value of wool. Wool is not, I don't well, I mean, I don't know anything. So that's I understand that. But basic wool has all the miraculous properties of wool, whether it's merino wool or Corriedale or whatever,
Yeah,
wool,
yeah,
wonderful material.
yeah,
And it is some of that know-how of not to shrink and things like that that maybe we've lost, or how to make it softer or things like that. You know, I feel like my fiber knowledge isn't as strong as other people's. I tend to feel like the color is really what gets me, but I do
mm,
feel like the one thing is wool itself.
yeah, yeah.
And so that feels,
Yeah,
but
and I actually feel like there is a healing property of wool. Like it just feels so good against your skin. It's so soothing. And so and of course I prefer, I actually don't mind if something is itchy or scratchy. That feels good too. I mean, I won't wear James, I won't wear like Shetland wool next to bare skin, but I love the feeling of it over a shirt where it just feels so warm and comforting. And um, of course, I love cashmere and softer wools, but like something like this where it just feels like I find myself touching it throughout the day, and it's almost I believe there are healing properties, and in fact, I have read things about people who have had wool mattresses made and wool pillows, and that they find it to be a very healing, that they've experienced healing from uh
mhm,
that fabric.
right.
So
Well,
yeah,
it doesn't seem like that far off from like an herbalist understanding how plants impact you when you digest them or
yeah,
interact with them on the surface of your
yeah,
body.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I guess it is my comment, yes, just to underscore, is out of respect for the magic of wool.
yeah,
And,
it-
and like I would say, hubris of humanity to think we can improve on
yeah,
some things
yeah,
are just really like, it's important to just appreciate how they come.
yeah,
So, uh,
yeah,
whatever, like the trade-off, I think we are coming to this in this era of our lives. Two things about it. And again, I'm not particularly aggressive about any of these things. I'm just observing them is that, yeah, maybe something would be easier to wash, but it wouldn't last as long, and you
yeah,
can feel like,
exactly. And you
oh,
really don't need to wash it that often, but
you know what?
I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I wash my knits once a year, it seems, and I put them out in the sun and they're all day. It's good.
Our hair. Now we don't wash our hair every day.
Right, exactly. Um, so Elizabeth Zimmerman was someone who really inspired me. That was my first knitting teacher. And many of my videos in here are about Elizabeth Zimmerman. And what I love about her so much is that she empowered me. I think I have a learning disability when it comes to patterns. I struggle with patterns. I don't understand sometimes I'll just be like, what do they want me to do here? I don't understand. Um, and so she just helped me to kind of think in terms of percentages and empowered me to make a sweater. Um, and it was really finding her that kind of opened up all the doors for knitting for me. It was just like, okay, now I can do anything. Even though I can't, but it just made me feel that everything was possible. And I wondered who were the people who inspired, were there any knitters any designers that inspired you in particular? Or, what was the start of your knitting? How did it all come to be?
Oh, that's a great question. Of course, my brain, I will think about that, but I also just want to say while I was listening to you, I was going, oh, how fun. We should do an Elizabeth Zimmerman knit along.
Yes, let's do it.
Because I haven't, unfortunately, there were two phases of my knitting life. There was when I first got married and had young children, and then I stopped knitting for like 15 years, and I gave everything away. And back in that time, I did have Elizabeth Zimmerman's book and,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
and I even got to go to knitting camp with her daughter because that's in Wisconsin, Meg's.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. Wow, how
Um,
cool.
yeah. So, and they're just a brilliant family. Like she knits
Amazing.
as pattern, as music, and like
Mm,
that connection. And
mm,
to see the confidence and empowerment that is possible through knitting.
mm,
Um, but it's hard for me to think back on, so I can go on like this new journey with knitting and what inspired me initially. But I mean, it all came with Instagram and
mm,
all of these images. And I think a lot of us have a very similar story. It was the images of everyday people and getting used to, I mean, it very came in with social media too.
mm,
Like they
mhm,
came into my life in the same, that was why I got involved in social media, was knitting.
mm.
Just like a visual avalanche of, in a way that we didn't, prior to social media, our
Yeah,
lives were not available for other people to see. You know what I mean?
absolutely. I was shocked when when Instagram, I was like, look at all these people who are knitting. I just had no idea.
And so that whole world of even doing a flat lay or showing your knitting and drinking, all these things are like cliches now to us, but you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
And, but also at the same time, strangely enough, so knitting, the second half of knitting, not the first half, was also this looking at yourself knitting. And whether that's right or wrong, I will say it was interesting. So I'm talking about what inspired me. I think the biggest influence was coming back to knitting with social media and seeing that. Now, now I can tell you, I love to take pictures of my work as I go and like pose them and make them beautiful and collect them for myself, to value myself, to record the process, to not be so, oh, it's just the end game. It's just the finished object. That moment it's finished and you say, ta-da, that's everything, to like bust that up and let it be the whole process
Process.
and
Yeah.
the wearing it. And I just noticed on my phone today, like I can talk about how I use social media in a minute too, but I noticed Vera Villamaki showing us, a strange angle of just a little part of her sweater, but saying, this is the sweater I'm wearing all the time, and I knit it last year. And like, I don't know, to me, that's a new version of of seeing knitting. But back to the question of what inspired me, I had all the crushes that I feel like everybody had, because we all had the same diet. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I was on the inside, it was revolutionary for me to see the grocery girls just being two sisters sitting and talking about anything versus, and it's not like I really don't watch TV, and I haven't since I was in middle school. Like it's just whatever, it's just, but I know what it looks like. I know that there would be a Today Show with two very polished people in a very polished way having soundbite conversations versus two real people talking and like
Right.
talking for
Right.
3 hours.
Right.
And that, I don't know. I again, it's funny because that's not about the knits, but it was like, oh, because I will also say, I remember I always journaled, I always read, and I read something that I used to shut myself down, and it was a, a quote by Norman Mailer, and I just was a prolific journaler, and he was like, basically like journaling sucks. It's for, I could say a swear word, it's just for dumb people, basically. And you have, who do you think you are? And
Oh
I'm,
my God.
well, I mean, that's how I took it. You know what
Right. 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 Right.
I
Right.
don't know. It doesn't matter. And,
Right.
people will say flip thing. I'm not condemning him. It's like, oh, what I have to contribute isn't important enough. And these knitting podcasts were like, you're important enough because you're knitting.
Yeah.
You know, that's it's almost kind of Christian in a way. You just I'm not practicing any religion, but I'm always open and curious about everything.
Yeah.
So I read about all of them. And that idea of you belong, period. You don't have to prove it. You
Yep.
don't have to, like, that blew me
Yeah.
away. And
Yeah.
that felt very exciting to me,
Yeah.
very invitational. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and in terms of like who has like obviously like it's Natasha from, Moonstruck Knits. It's like wonderful but you don't even have to, you don't have to be a designer, and you don't have to be gorgeous, you don't have to live in Amsterdam. You
Right.
it's the fact that it's so interesting to watch it like a giant garden, and one flower is blooming today and then another one will bloom another day, and it'll have
Yeah.
seasons, and to like be patient with all that, and to definitely not expect to be the one blooming all day long every
Yeah.
day all year.
Yeah. And at the same time, realizing that you have so much agency, that was, I think, listening to you talk about that, I think that was that was the feeling that I got from that whole period of time where I was like, yes, it's important. And absolutely, like that fed me so much. But then also, there were a lot of things going on in my life where I didn't feel agency. But knitting always gave me so much agency. And I think that that's just such an important piece of life that so many of us don't feel agency. And um and yet knitting offers you the ability to create these beautiful things and express yourself and present yourself in the world in a way that it has nothing to do, almost, I mean, you need some money to do it, but it's the riches it provides is so exponentially more than what you need to participate. It's just um you can, I always feel so proud of my knits, like I was yesterday, we were visiting, my son is visiting, was up visiting UVM, and I wore this, and I can't tell you how many people stopped me, and it's not a huge knitting community, surprisingly. I thought there'd be more knitters, but they were so shocked when I said to them, and I made it myself. I'm so immodest, like I'm just like, yeah, you like it, I made it. And so it's a way to connect with people without making anyone feel less than it, but at the same time it's uplifting. It's so different than wearing a super expensive piece of clothing and being like, oh yeah, this is this designer. It just has the opposite effect on people, and it's that is just so fascinating to me. It's
And it's practice showing up,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
I was on a walk too yesterday, and this is, I don't know how this is related to knitting, but it's true. Um, eye contact. It's very
Mm,
interesting being a woman, walking down the street and deciding, do I want to just be in here?
mm,
Do I want to look at you? Do I want to look at you driving by? And like in a different places, there's different expectations for eye contact. And and here it's different. And I feel like I'm practicing looking at people and letting go of how they look back at me, but just
mm,
practicing looking like with an openness and just looking
mm.
rather than protecting myself from looking or being in my own head, but not needing anything. I know that sounds very strange what I'm saying, but
No, not at all.
in a way, knits apprentice us to that too, because they they have their own energy and attention around them. So
Absolutely.
will get drawn into conversations, and you could have the whole gamut of proud, humble, talking about the mistakes in it or talking
Yeah.
about the joy in it. it's a very soft companion for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you and your interaction with others, like you were saying, this like membrane that you wear.
It's
Um,
so interesting what you say as I'm listening to this. It's like it teaches us non-attachment as well, because it's like it's almost like ripping something back when you feel like it's not what you want. And um, then you go, I don't know how your experience is when I'm knitting things, I start off, I'm really excited. And then as it develops, maybe I have doubts about the color, or I'm like, oh, maybe this isn't the texture that I really wanted. And there's a point where I say, I'm just going to move forward. If it's good enough, I'm going to go forward with it. And then at the end, it's always new. It's not, it's never for me. It's never, I'm not an expert knitter, and it's not really, this isn't what I mean, but it's never what I expect, but it's something beautiful, and it's like what it's meant to be. And then when you put it on and you go out into the world, when you've decided it's good enough and it's fine, I notice that I'm not looking for approval from others. So yeah, it's so interesting. So when you talk about like looking at others, you're actually, to me, that feels like you're just actually observing them, seeing them for who they are without looking to gain anything back at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
It's that's
Yeah.
really great. I love that.
Well, and I would say another piece in that the relation to the knitting changes in the process of the knitting is also just working through our own self-criticism, which will never go away. Like,
Right.
it's a lovely thing to realize, but you
Right.
haven't failed because you're feeling self-critical today. It's like, nope, this is just another chance to practice.
Exactly.
Deal with yourself when you're feeling self-critical. And so that thing that you said about the knit becomes what it needs to be in the end,
Yeah.
not really what I thought. I mean, that's just so fantastic to teach ourselves
Yes.
in all ways too.
Yeah.
And I would say, but to reinforce what you just said, I love how you can show, like, especially women and how women have historically, a lot of, and continues to be a lot of emphasis on your appearance. So this is a visual thing, but it allows you to show up in a way that's just very loving and accepting. And it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with what age you are or size you are or anything like that,
Yeah. Oh, it's
you.
like a creative act, and there's something about that just, it doesn't matter. Your appearance is secondary to it. It's like you're not looking to, it's not a, I think sometimes it feels show offy to show, when I'm on Instagram and I'm showing my knits, but it's never, it doesn't feel like, look at me. It feels like, look at this, and look at what I'm doing with it. Look at how and so it doesn't, I mean, I guess it depends. We all see what we want to see. And so, but for me, it's just uh, like an earnest or authentic expression. And take it for what, take you what you're going to see out of it. You're going to project something onto it, right? But I don't have anything to do with what you see in it. It's like there's it's almost like you're not in there. It's almost like you're, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to say what I mean, but it's something about taking out the personal, the narcissistic personal, in looking at, and I'm putting this forth, and this is what I'm deciding is going to be the thing.
What I hear you saying reminds me of young girls, like
Yeah,
3 5-year-old girls, and their joy of getting dressed, like
yeah,
whatever they want to wear, and they're
yeah.
like, woohoo, look at me. And it's just play,
Yeah,
like
it's play and expression, and yeah.
really different lane than, self-evaluation and all of that
Well,
business.
that's it. It's like, I look at someone like Elizabeth Zimmerman, and I look at the pictures of her life when she was an elderly woman, and she was so beautiful, and she was so proud of her knits, and she just, that was, and pictures of her family, and it was like it was her looks were, it's like she was completely defined by her art, even though she never called herself an artist or viewed it as art. Um, and I guess that is really what art is, making things, everything more beautiful. And that always strikes me when I have responses from people about what I'm wearing, and that there is like genuine appreciation comes from that, as opposed to when as opposed to like middle school girls, there may be a really beautiful girl there, but there's always like, there's something negative in that appreciation of each other. Whereas this just seems to transcend that. And I love that so much about it.
Yeah, I mean, we culturally, like, we have Georgia O'Keeffe, Frida Kahlo. I don't know who you'd add to it, but these like incredibly beautiful and Elizabeth,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
are incredibly beautiful because they are incredibly themselves.
yes, yes, yes. I
It
love that.
has nothing to do with
Yeah.
the proportions of their cheekbones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that is so important for us as we get older, to have, an alternative to just focusing on our appearance, to authentically define ourselves through our creativity. Yeah.
I would say the only thing like that makes me feel as beautiful as my knits, this is just my children being with
Yeah.
them. I feel like, and that's that same kind of beauty, like,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. It's like pride in what you've had a hand in doing. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
this is real.
Yeah.
This comes out of our ancestry.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
other stuff, this marketing that's,
Yeah.
you're not enough, is
Yeah.
it's real. The pain it inflicts on us is real.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then it's funny because I said this at the very beginning, so I'm going to say it now. To recognize what the pitfalls are. The pitfalls will be competitive. I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
This isn't good enough. She's better. I want more of that. I want what they have. I get it.
Mhm.
But just to go, those are the real pitfalls. We're all going to have obstacles, but this is the invitation to go
Mhm.
toward this and
Mhm.
keep making more and more of that for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's lovely. I love ending on that note. If thank
Sure.
thank
Yeah.
you so much for this time, and for taking time out of your day to be with me. I'm just like so appreciative, and
Yeah, no, it was a complete pleasure for me. Thank you. Thank
great.
you.
So maybe I'll stop the recording and you can tell me what I have to do.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, hold on one second.
Bye.
Bye.